I'm about to share with you real salary numbers reported directly from real founders of over 150 businesses. And that includes their own salaries, how much they're paying out on top of that, how much they're paying their C-suite employees, and which industry niches are paying out the most, which also implies we'll do the opposite. This is data, by the way, that is sourced directly from founders over at the community of high net worth founders at joinhampton.com, which means that this isn't secondhand data. This isn't mixing data. This isn't interpreting other people's data. This is information that is completely exclusive and you can't get anywhere else. And it's fascinating. So here's exactly what we're going to go over in this video. We'll start with the base salary overviews. Then we'll talk about the additional bonuses and distributions. Then we'll go to the C-suite pay and also equity, if there is some or not. Then we'll compare by industry. Then we'll compare by funding stage. And finally, the ways that some founders are finding ways to make it more worth their while, especially those who aren't paying themselves, which you'll find out in a minute. There are some who aren't. And just before we get to that, if you want to ask these founders some questions more directly, maybe online, maybe in person, maybe you go to their house and become friends with them and have dinner with their family. It sounds creepy, but it's a community. So it's not. You can check it out at joinhampton.com. It's a community of high net worth founders. If you're doing at least $3 million in revenue, check it out. I'm Jackie Lamport, and this is Moneywise, a show for founders unlike anything else you'll find out there. We are hyper-transparent about finances, both business and personal, and we have vulnerable conversations about what it really takes to be a founder. And speaking of those finances, let's get to them. Starting with part one, base salaries. Okay, so all of this data comes from the most recent full year of data that we can get, which is 2024. And also important context is what role those founders are playing in their business currently. So let's start with that to understand, their salaries. Okay, so for this data, we had 67% of respondents who were both the founder and the current CEO of the business. 16% were just CEOs, and 13% were just founders. Getting right to the interesting stuff, 8% of the respondents actually said that they paid themselves nothing. And there are a couple reasons for that. Obviously, there's additional payouts and bonuses and whatnot, and we can talk about that more in a second. But there's also the other story, which is that a lot of the founders that we've spoken to on this show have told us that they paid themselves nothing, particularly early on, in favor of putting everything right back into the business so that they can scale it as fast as possible with the hope that there's, a big payout in the form of an exit of tens of millions of dollars or something like that down the road. And that has happened for the majority of the people that we've spoken to. However, this is survivorship bias, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. And before we move on from that point, a lot of the founders who actually did go about it that way, even if it did pay off, they have told us on the show that they kind of wish that they didn't, that they had paid themselves just at least a little bit to make their lives good along the way. Not that they weren't good, but it could have been better and it probably would have worked out the same way. The vast majority of those founders do pay themselves. However, about 80% of them keep it under 300K. It's only when you get into the final 4% that you reach the numbers above 500. Okay, just to address it, I got too warm. I'm in a t-shirt now. But let's get to part two, which is additional payouts and bonuses. So it was actually only about 29% of founders who said that they are paying themselves their salary and nothing more. 9% of respondents actually said that they're paying themselves at least $1 million extra a year. The highest percentage of respondents was 30% of people who are taking home an extra between 100 and 300K. But there's also something else here that wasn't in the report that I want to comment on. And it's a trend that I've seen from interviewing founders for the past 2 years on this show. It's that there are two stories, really, of why founders are choosing to do what they do. And those averages that we're seeing, they don't really tell those stories. The first thing is what we have already talked about, which is the fact that there are founders who are putting everything that they can back into the business so that they can scale it and grow it with the intention of future windfalls. The other group are the people who are optimizing for cash flow. So it's about the business right now and subsidizing their lifestyle as they're living it. Now, something that's interesting is that the people who seem to be optimizing for cash flow are those who are second or third time founders or also seeing it as a lifestyle business. I'm not going to say which way is right or wrong because, there's a lot of factors that would play into that, and that's not what this episode is for. I will say, if you are interested, that there are a ton of episodes in our back catalog where we talk to founders who are doing one of those two things, and you can see for yourself. But at this point, let's get a further, more specific breakdown on the total take-home for founders. That's salary and also any additional distributions, but by net worth. So founders in the $1 to $10 million net worth range are taking home on average about 350-ish K. Then we get to the 10 to 20 and we're looking at about 500. 20 to 50, we get to the million. Triple that for 50 to 100. And then 6.5 million yearly take home for the 100 plus founders. 100 million net worth plus, not age, obviously. Now, I did say that we're going to talk about the kind of interesting ways that founders are paying themselves that aren't salary, making it worth their while. And we're going to in a bit. But first, let's talk about those C-suite execs because they're obviously getting some money too. So what is it? How much? So part 3, C-suite salaries and equity. Now, this data obviously needs to be filtered a little bit more because not every company is going to have the same C-suite team or roles. And also, in some cases, there are founders who are acting as those roles. So we're actually not counting those ones at all. The roles that we did ask about were heads of marketing, product, operations, tech, and sales. And all of those salaries sat pretty much in between 120K and 200K. What did make the difference between the roles was bonuses. So let's talk about those. The majority of the roles had pretty modest bonuses. We have for the heads of HR, marketing, product, and operations, all around 25 to 50K extra a year. Then we get to the heads of tech, who are looking at roughly an extra 70K. And the biggest jump, not surprising, comes from the sales heads, who nearly doubled their take home after adding the bonuses. So we have an average salary of around 157,000 and then an average bonus of around 125,000. Pretty good. But alas, it does not end there. Roughly 35% of founders said that they also offer equity packages to the C-suite team. 20% said that they offer profit sharing. And then 18% actually said that they give both. Now, at this point, we have been looking at averages across the board. But it's about to get really interesting because we're going to break it down by industry. Okay, so part 4, industry comparison. And just so you're not confused, we are going back to the founder-based salaries and additional bonuses, which, by the way, those additional bonuses and payouts, that can really change things for a few industries in particular. For instance, the healthcare industry, they have salary averages at about 168K, which is below the total average, which was 202. However, bonuses, they saw an average of 870K, which is far above the 332 total average. Now, we actually did cover a lot of industries here, so I'm not just going to throw a bunch of numbers and labels at you. What I will do instead is I will list off the top 5 industries by salary and then a separate list for the top 5 by bonuses. And if you're wondering what the lowest one is, I can just tell you right now that home, garden, and outdoors is the lowest for both of those. So sad day to love trees. Okay, so the top 5 industries by salary. Starting at number 5, we have real estate. Number 4, we have information and technology. Number 3, we get beauty and wellness. Number 2, pets and animal care. And in the number 1 position, we have finance and insurance. Not really surprising there. And for bonuses, we have in number 5, beauty and wellness. Number 4, apparel and accessories. Number 3, finance and insurance. Number 2, education. And as I already gave away, number 1, healthcare. Notably, by the way, the only 2 industries that are on both of those lists were finance and insurance and beauty and wellness, which, I mean, they're similar in a way-ish. They're not. Now, there are more ways to compare, and we will, which is why we're going into part 5, which is looking at the differences in total packages by funding stages. So for this one, we've just totaled everything together. So all the salary, the bonuses, the distributions. Yeah. And unsurprisingly, perhaps, the top earners were the people who were bootstrapped or self-funded, and they saw an average about 650K take home a year. And the lowest group was actually Series B founders, or founders who were in the Series B stage, and their average was 260K take home. And for the rest of them, Series A founders saw an average of 305K, Series C saw 460, and private equity-owned founders saw an average of 414K. And yeah, that's a quick section. That's all I got. And this is the part that you've been waiting for anyway, because it's not something that you can see in the numbers. This is the stuff that you have to get directly from founders, and you have to know the right questions to ask. It is part 6, which is the creative ways that founders are making it worth their while. What we asked founders here is how else they felt compensated. And the responses were quite interesting. So if you take salary for what it is, which is a way to pay for your life, a lot of founders have found that that official salary isn't really the only way to do that. One founder in particular told us that they run 50% of their expenses through the business. So that includes 50% of rent, Wi-Fi, gym, and travel expenses. Another common response outside of personal expenses was credit card points. One person actually said that they are taking home an extra $3,000 a month in credit cards cashback. And a couple more notable responses. One person said that they were doing 401k matching, which made it worth their while. And lastly, one person said that they took out a $250K loan against the company. Now, this isn't necessarily advice to actually do any of these things. There are a lot of things that matter when you're thinking about it, including your relationships with your employees and your co-founders and your investors, your tax strategies, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this isn't saying that this is good or bad. This is just saying here's what we've heard. However, if you do want some tailored responses or advice, it's best to just ask founders who are also in your position, which, hey, you can do at the Hampton community, joinhampton.com. If you're a founder who's doing at least $3 million in revenue, you should check it out. Also, if you want to see this whole report, which has a lot of stuff that we didn't actually cover in this video, then you can check that out by clicking the link in the comments. And if you like these report breakdown videos, which I've been informed by a few of you at least that you do, then click here because I did another one on a wealth report. So that's the personal net worth information for the founders in our community. Yeah, so check that out.